Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are stepping into the arena. And I don't mean a gladiatorial arena, although, let's be honest, looking at the news lately, it certainly can feel like one.
It absolutely can. A real battleground. But, usually what we see on TV is just the dust kicking up on the surface.
Exactly. And that's not what we're here for today. We aren't here to talk about the shouting matches on the 9 p.m. news or who tweeted what about whom. We are going way, way deeper.
Down to the foundations.
Yes. We're looking at the sociological undercurrents that actually drive the entire machine. I mean, I really want to know. Is democracy in India just a numbers game? Is it just about who gets to 272?
Or is it something more?
Or is it this massive, complex clash of castes, of classes, and maybe even these, hidden elites operating in the shadows?
It's such a fascinating question. Because on the surface, you've got the voting, the rallies, the manifestos, all the things we see.
The performance of it all.
Exactly, the performance. But underneath all that, there are these tectonic plates moving. You have caste dynamics, deep-seated power theories, pressure groups pulling in every direction. It's messy, for sure, but it's what I like to call structured chaos.
Structured chaos. I love that. It perfectly describes it. Now, before we try to map out that chaos, a quick but very important note for all of you listening.
A really important one.
This deep dive is specially tailored for the Simplified UPSC by PTP community.
That's right. We're not just having a chat. We're breaking this down specifically to help you understand these concepts and, ace those exams. We're strategizing with you.
So, with that in mind, here is a humble request. If you're listening to this and you want to improve your retention, and let's be real, you want to stop rereading the same chapter 5 times.
We've all been there.
Please hit that subscribe button to the channel right now. It really, really helps the algorithm get this content out to serious aspirants like you.
It makes a huge difference.
And if you are able and you find real value in what we do, please consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Honestly, it keeps the lights on, it funds the research, and it keeps the super useful content coming your way.
And on that note, a huge, huge shout out to all our current supporters. You guys are the fuel in our engine. You're the reason we can sit here and do this deep level of research.
Absolutely. We couldn't do it without you. And please don't forget to like the video or audio and share your comments below. We read them and they genuinely help us improve.
We do. And for resources, don't forget the free notes with practice PYQs, that's previous year questions, are available on the public Telegram channel.
Just DM to join. And for those who want the full arsenal...
the gold mine.
It's a private Telegram library. It has all the videos in this series, plus premium notes. We're talking detailed breakdowns, extra PYQs, and model mains answers, all organized perfectly.
It's everything you need. Seriously, DM on the public channel to join that.
Okay, housekeeping done. Let's dive in. Our main source today is Essential Sociology by Nitin Sangwan, specifically Chapter 22, Politics and Indian Society.
And we're mixing in some heavy-hitting PYQ analysis from the last few years to make it really practical.
The mission today is simple. Decode the sociological theories of power, understand the specific flavor of Indian democracy, look at pressure groups, are they a safety valve or a threat? And figure out how to apply all this to solve UPSC mains questions without sounding like a generic journalist.
So let's do it.
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. The sociology of politics. Now, I have to be honest with you. When I first saw politics and society as a chapter, my first thought was, okay, boring. This is civics class all over again.
I get that.
I just thought politics was, government, laws, the Constitution. But sociologists seem to think they own the place too. What gives?
It's a bit of a turf war, isn't it? And it's a really common perception. See, traditionally, political science looks at the processes within government. They care about the Constitution, the laws, the parliamentary procedures.
The machinery.
The machinery. That's a perfect word for it.
Yeah.
If you want to know how a bill becomes a law, you ask a political scientist.
Okay, so they're the mechanics of the car. They know how the engine works, what the parts are.
Exactly. But sociology. Sociology looks at the fuel. It looks at the social basis of these processes. It asks, who is driving the car?
And why are they driving it to the left instead of the right?
Precisely. And are the passengers fighting in the back seat? Who paid for the gas? It looks at the social forces caste, kinship, religion, demography that actually make the political machine move.
So if political science gives us the rule book for the game,
sociology tells us how the players are actually playing it, how they bend the rules, why they form teams, and what they're really fighting for.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about the road conditions, too.
Road conditions, yes. Think about it. You can have a perfect constitution on paper, Absolute equality, secularism, justice for all. A beautiful document. But if you drop that constitution into a society that is deeply, deeply divided by caste, by kinship, by religion, that constitution is going to function very differently than it would in a homogeneous society, like, say, Sweden.
It's not operating in a vacuum?
Never. The source material, chapter 1 of the text actually, highlights this convergence. It says, while political science gives us the laws, sociology provides the data on human behavior that dictates how those laws actually play out in the real world.
Okay, and there's this term, dialectical relationship. It sounds like something I'd write in an essay to sound smart without really knowing what it means. What does it actually mean here?
It sounds more complicated than it is. It just means it's a two-way street. It's an interaction where both sides change each other constantly.
A feedback loop.
A feedback loop, exactly. Political systems affect social institutions, and at the very same time, social institutions affect politics.
Okay, give me a concrete example, something I can really visualize.
Okay, let's take the family. That's a core social institution. Private, personal, right.
Yeah, you would think so.
But look at China. For decades, the state, a political entity, enforced a one-child policy. That is, politics literally reaching into the bedroom and reshaping the family structure. It changed demographics, it changed how people view siblings.
It changed everything.
Everything. That's the political influencing the social. Or take India, the government promoting family planning. That's the state trying to shape a social outcome.
Okay, that makes total sense. The state pushes on society. But what about the other way around? How does something social, like my family or my community, push back on the state?
Caste-based voting. I mean, you cannot begin to understand Indian elections without understanding caste. It's the prime example.
Right.
You have millions of people voting not on economic policy, not on foreign policy, but on kinship ties. He's a Jat, I'm a Jat, so I vote for him.
Yeah.
That is a social institution caste completely hijacking a political process.
So the ballot box was meant to be for an individual choice.
But society made it a communal one, a collective decision.
That brings us to a legendary name in Indian sociology, M.N. Srinivas.
The giant of the field. You cannot write a sociology answer in India without quoting him at some point. It's almost a rule.
And he coined a term that every politician and journalist uses today, probably without knowing a sociologist came up with it, vote bank politics.
Exactly. It's so common now we forget its origin. M.N. Srinivas observed that in India, people often don't vote as independent individuals making a rational economic choice. They vote as blocks, as banks of votes, usually mobilized by caste or religious leaders. He brought that sociological lens to a political phenomenon.
And for an aspirant listening to this, why does this distinction actually matter? Why can't they just write about the Election Commission and its powers?
Because the UPSC examiner knows you know what the Election Commission is. That's General Studies Paper 2. That's the basics.
It's table stakes.
It's table stakes. In Sociology Paper 1 and Paper 2, you aren't just describing the mechanism. You have to analyze human behavior. Why do people rally? Why do they riot? Why would a community vote for a known criminal just because he's from their caste? If you just list the powers of the EC, you get average marks.
But if you can explain it sociologically.
If you can explain how caste associations mobilize voters to put pressure on the EC, or how religious identity shapes voting patterns, that's when you get the GOT marks. You're showing a deeper understanding.
It's making sense. It's not about the rule book. It's about the reality of how the game is played, which I think leads us perfectly into the big, heavy question of segment 2, theories of power. Who really rules?
The eternal question.
Is it us, the people, the we in We the People, or is it some secret club pulling the strings?
Well, democracy says it's the people, government of the people, by the people, for the people. But elite theory comes along and says, nice try, but no.
Elite theory. This sounds like a conspiracy theory. You know, Illuminati stuff, men in smoky rooms.
It feels like that, doesn't it? It has that vibe.
Yeah.
But it's less of a conspiracy and more of a cold, hard observation of organizational reality. And for the exam, you need to know the big 4 classical elite theorists: Pareto, Mosca, Michels, and the American C. Wright Mills.
Okay, let's break them down one by one. Vilfredo, Pareto. He had this whole zoo metaphor going on, right? Lions and foxes.
He did. Pareto's core concept is the circulation of elites. And he gave us this haunting phrase: history is a graveyard of aristocracies.
That is dark, but what does it actually mean?
It means no ruling class lasts forever. They all decay. They rot from the inside. And Pareto categorized these elites into 2 psychological types: the lions and the foxes.
Okay, so lions are pretty self-explanatory, strong, aggressive.
Exactly. Lions rule by force. They're decisive, strong, maybe a bit brutal. They're good at seizing power. Think of a revolutionary leader, a military general who stages a coup. They have the force to take the throne.
Okay, and the foxes?
The foxes rule by cunning, by manipulation, by diplomacy, by deals. They're smart, they're clever, but they might lack the sheer will or force to crack down when things get really tough.
So how do they circulate?
Well, Pareto says these groups cycle. The lions rule for a while, but they get complacent. They lose their teeth. They become bureaucratic. And they start relying on foxes to run the complicated machinery of the state.
And then the foxes see an opportunity and take over.
Eventually, yes,
Hmm.
they outsmart the aging lions. But the foxes have their own weakness. They're too soft, too clever by half to handle a real crisis. When a war happens, or a massive economic collapse, the public doesn't want a clever fox who makes a deal.
They want a strong lion again.
And the cycle restarts. A new group of lions emerges.
That feels incredibly, I mean, almost uncomfortably relevant to Indian politics. You see a political dynasty, maybe they started as lions, freedom fighters.
Right, they had that strength, that conviction.
But 3 generations later, they've lost that vigor, as Pareto would say. They become disconnected. They become purely foxes, just trying to manage alliances and cut deals, but they've lost that connection to the ground.
And then a new force arises, a new lion, appealing to strength and decisiveness. It's a constant churning cycle.
Okay, next up, Gaetano Mosca. He was even more blunt, wasn't he?
Mosca was brutal. He said, forget the entire idea of majority rule. It's a myth, a fairy tale we tell ourselves.
So what's the reality, according to him?
In every society, throughout all of history, there are just 2 classes, the rulers and the ruled. And the rulers are always a minority.
Always, even in a democracy of over 1 billion people.
Especially then. Mosca's argument was simple and powerful. The minority is organized. The majority is unorganized.
Ah.
And an organized minority will always dominate an unorganized majority. Think about it. 1 billion people can't agree on what to have for lunch, let alone complex national policy.
Right.
But a cabinet of 30 people, they can meet in a room and decide the fate of the nation in an hour.
That is depressing, but it explains so much. It explains why tiny, well-organized interest groups can get laws passed that the majority of people might actually hate.
Precisely. Organization is power.
Okay, what about Robert Michels? He had a law with a very imposing name.
The iron law of oligarchy. This is absolutely crucial for anyone studying political parties or even large NGOs. Michels argued that organization inevitably leads to oligarchy.
Why inevitably? That's such a strong final word.
Because to run a big organization, like a political party or a trade union, you need a bureaucracy. You need leaders. You need experts. You can't have 1 million members voting on every single email that gets sent. It's impossible.
Right, that's just basic efficiency. You have to delegate.
But Michel says that efficiency comes at a steep price. Eventually, that leadership group becomes a clique, a small inner circle. They control the files, the money, the communication channels.
They become entrenched.
Exactly. And they start caring more about keeping their own positions and perks than about the original goals of the organization. And the masses. Michel said the masses are generally passive and actually want leadership. So even in the most democratic party, a small group eventually ends up calling all the shots.
So true democracy is basically impossible because the very act of organizing to achieve it kills it.
According to Michels, yes. He famously said, "Who says organization says oligarchy?" It's a bleak but powerful observation.
Wow. Okay, the last of the big 4, C. Wright Mills. He's the American one, right?
Yes, his focus was on post-war America, and his concept was the power elite. He wasn't looking at psychology like Pareto's lions and foxes. He was looking at institutions.
So less about the person and more about the position they hold.
Exactly. He analyzed the USA and saw a triangle of power: the military, the big industrial corporations, and the top political executives.
The military-industrial complex, we've all heard that term.
That's the one. And he argued these 3 domains are interlocked. The general retires and gets a cushy job on the board of a missile company. The CEO of that missile company gets appointed as the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, all go to the same schools, the same clubs.
They know each other, they vacation together, they scratch each other's backs, and they effectively run the country, regardless of who is in the White House. It's a cohesive ruling class based on institutional position.
So let's bring this home. Applying all of this to India, the so what factor. We obviously had traditional elites, right? The Maharajas, the Zamindars.
Correct. Historically in India, elite status was ascribed. You were born a Brahmin or a Kshatriya. You were born a Zamindar, a feudal lord. Power was tied directly to land and ritual status. You didn't have to win an election. You just had to be born into the right family.
But then came 1947, democracy, the Constitution, the whole game changed.
A massive, massive transition. The princely states were dissolved. Land reforms, however flawed and partial they were, weakened the Zamindars. The old guard lost their legal standing, their formal power.
But power doesn't just disappear, it just shifts.
It never disappears. It just finds a new form.
So where did it go?
Well, in rural India, we saw the rise of what M.N. Srinivas called the dominant caste. Power shifted from the ritual elites, like the Brahmins, to the numerical elite.
The ones with the numbers.
The ones with the numbers and the land. The land-owning farming castes like the Yadavs in the north, the Jants, the Reddys and Volkaligas in the south. Democracy suddenly made numbers the most important currency. If you have the numbers, you have the vote. If you have the land, you have the money to mobilize those votes.
And what about in the cities? In urban India?
In urban areas, it's a bit more complex. You have, of course, the professional service class, the big business elites. But there's a really fascinating concept by the sociologist Dipankar Gupta that you should definitely use in your answers. It's called the citizen elite.
Citizen elite. That sounds like an oxymoron. Elites are usually seen as the bad guys, and citizens are the good guys.
It does, doesn't it? But Gupta's argument is that true modernization in India is being driven by a specific class of elites who essentially break away from the traditional patronage networks.
What do you mean by that?
They aren't trying to just get favors for their caste or their community. They are pushing for universal citizenship values. The rule of law, meritocracy, clean streets, efficient governance, things that benefit everyone.
So these are the people demanding better systems, not just better favors for their group.
Exactly. And often, they have to go against the popular demands of the masses to push the country forward. It really challenges the simplistic narrative that elites are always parasitic. Sometimes, Gupta argues, the elite are the only ones with the vision and the power to modernize the entire structure.
That's a really interesting nuance. Okay, let's shift gears to segment 3, pressure groups. The title we have here is the safety valve or the threat. First off, a basic definition. What is a pressure group? How is it different from a political party?
It's a simple but crucial distinction. A political party wants to capture political power. Their goal is to sit in the prime minister's chair.
They want to run the show.
They want to run the show. A pressure group, on the other hand, wants to influence political power. They don't want to run the government. They just want the government to do what they say on a specific issue.
So they're the power behind the throne.
Or the thorn in the side of the throne, depending on your perspective. The source material breaks them down into 4 main types, which is a useful framework.
Okay, let's run through them quickly so we can get to the big debate.
First, you have institutional pressure groups.
Mm.
These are actually inside the government machinery itself. Think of the INS Association or factions within the army. They're part of the state, but they lobby internally for their own interests. Better pay, more autonomy, things like that.
Right. An inside job. Got it.
Second, associational pressure groups. These are the ones we're most familiar with. They're specialized, organized groups, FICCI or CII for businesses, trade unions like AITUC, student unions like NSUI or ABVP. They have a registered office, a letterhead, and a very clear agenda.
And the third type?
Community associations. This is a very, very Indian phenomenon. These are based on caste or religion. Caste associations, religious organizations. They bargain for benefits based on community identity. Give our caste reservation or our entire community won't vote for you.
And the fourth one sounded a bit chaotic. Anomic.
Anomic pressure groups. The word means normless. These are spontaneous outbursts, a riot that erupts after a specific event, a sudden demonstration that blocks a highway. They aren't planned months in advance with a manifesto. They are an emotional, often violent outburst of a group, and they're usually short-lived.
Okay, now in the specific context of India, the source mentions the word scarcity. How does that change the game for these groups?
This is absolutely critical for your analysis. In a wealthy, developed country, maybe everyone gets a slice of a growing cake. But in a developing country like India, resources are scarce. The pie is small. So politics becomes what they call a zero-sum game.
Meaning, if I win, you have to lose.
Exactly. If one caste gets reservation benefits, another caste feels they have lost a seat in a college or a government job. If farmers get a massive subsidy, the urban middle class feels they're the ones paying for it with higher taxes. Pressure groups fight so fiercely because they're often fighting for survival for a tiny slice of the national budget.
So are they good or bad for democracy? The source seems to be split on this.
It's a classic debate. There are 2 main views. The positive view is the safety valve theory.
A safety valve on a pressure cooker.
Precisely. Democracy is like a pressure cooker. Elections happen only once every 5 years. If you don't let the steam out in between, the whole thing explodes. Pressure groups allow marginalized voices, farmers, students, tribals, to vent their grievances and get heard between elections. In that sense, they democratize the process.
But let me play devil's advocate here. What about when they block highways for months? What about when they hold the capital city hostage with protests? That doesn't feel like a safety valve. That feels like a breakdown of the system.
And that is the negative view, exactly. They can resort to what the book calls strong-arm tactics, bans, guerrillas, blocking railways, and then there's the huge inequality issue.
Right. Not all pressure groups are created equal.
Not at all. A business lobby like FICCI has money, it has lawyers, it has access to the Prime Minister's office. A group of unorganized, landless laborers, they have none of that. So policy often gets skewed towards the well-funded, well-connected groups against the interests of the poor.
The source specifically brings up the recent farmers' movement.
A classic textbook example. Whether you supported the farm laws or opposed them, from a sociological perspective, it was a masterclass in pressure group politics. It showed the immense power of a well-organized, determined pressure group to actually force a government with a huge majority to repeal laws.
So it proves that in Indian democracy, voting isn't the only way to exercise power.
Not by a long shot. Street power still matters. A lot.
Moving on to segment 4, regionalism and decentralization. This feels like a constant tug of war, the center in Delhi pulling everything in, and the states, the regions pulling out.
It is the great federal tussle of India. Regionalism is basically an ideology where your primary loyalty is to your region, your state, your language, your culture, sometimes even above your loyalty to the nation.
Now, is that a bad thing? We often hear it described in the news as anti-national.
Well, like most things in sociology, it's a double-edged sword. On the negative side, it can threaten national unity. You get bitter interstate water disputes like the Kaveri issue, where two states fight like they are separate countries.
Or the Sons of the Soil movements.
Exactly. The text mentions Shiv Sena in Maharashtra, movements where locals want jobs and resources reserved only for them, excluding other Indians from other states. That can be very divisive.
But there's a positive side to it, too.
Yes, and this is where you must quote the scholar Rajni Kothari if you want to look smart in your answer. He argued that regionalism has actually federalized the old Congress system and, paradoxically, deepened Indian democracy.
Wait, how does breaking things up into regional blocks deepen democracy? That seems counterintuitive.
By allowing for cultural expression and autonomy. Think about it. If India in the 1950s had tried to be a monolith, one language, one culture, one way of life, all dictated from Delhi, it would have fractured, would have broken apart.
Like the Soviet Union or Yugoslavia?
Precisely.
Yeah.
By allowing regional identities, languages, and cultures to flourish, India avoided the balkanization that so many people feared. We let people be Tamil and Indian, or Bengali and Indian. So in a strange way, regionalism acted as a glue that held the diverse country together.
So accommodating regionalism actually saved the nation rather than breaking it. That's a powerful nuance.
It's a critical insight.
Now, what about the other side of that coin? Decentralization. The 73rd and 74th Amendments, Panchayati Raj. This was the big dream, right? Power to the villages.
It was certainly Gandhi's dream. He called it Gram Swaraj, village self-rule. He believed the soul of India lives in its villages. But we have to remember, there was a very powerful voice opposing this idea, B.R. Ambedkar.
Ambedkar was against it. Why?
He was deeply skeptical, even hostile to the idea. He famously called the village a den of localism, ignorance, and narrow-mindedness. He feared that in the closed, hierarchical world of a village, the upper castes would simply crush the lower castes without any check on their power. He saw the central state as a protector of the oppressed.
That is a very harsh critique. So, after all these years, who was right? Gandhi or Ambedkar? How did it actually turn out?
Well, the reality is a classic mixed bag. The source mentions one huge, undeniable success. The 33% reservation for women in panchayats. This has created a massive new class of female leadership at the grassroots level. You cannot ignore that. Millions of women have entered politics for the first time.
Okay, that's a huge positive, but I sense a but coming.
But we have the famous 3 Fs of failure: a lack of functions, a lack of funds, and a lack of functionaries. State governments are simply reluctant to give up their power.
They don't want to devolve real authority.
Exactly. They haven't transferred enough important functions, or the funds to carry them out, to the panchayats. So very often the Sarpanch is just a figurehead with an office, but no real budget or power.
And sociologically, did Ambedkar's fear about caste domination come true?
To a large extent, yes. In many parts of the country, the dominant castes do capture the panchayats. And we have the widespread phenomenon of the Pari Sarpanch.
The husband of the Sarpanch.
Yes. The seat is reserved for a woman, so the wife gets elected on paper. But it's the husband who sits in the chair, takes the meetings, and makes all the decisions. It's a form of proxy rule.
It's almost tragic, isn't it? You change the law, but the deep-rooted culture of patriarchy just refuses to budge.
It shows how a social structure patriarchy can resist political change. You can pass an amendment in parliament, but you can't pass an amendment in people's minds overnight. That's that dialectical relationship right there, in action.
Let's move to our fifth segment. Secularization and religion in politics. Now, the typical Western idea of being secular is a clear separation of church and state. You stay over there, I'll stay over here.
The wall of separation, as Thomas Jefferson called it. But that was never really our model in India. We follow a model of Sarva Dharma Sambhava, which is better translated as principled distance.
So not total separation?
Not at all. The state doesn't favor one religion, but it engages with all of them. It subsidizes the Hajj pilgrimage for Muslims and also manages the administration of major Hindu temples. It's a very different approach.
But there's a huge paradox here. The old modernization thesis, the idea that as societies get more modern, more scientific, more educated, predicted that religion would fade away. It would become a private hobby, like stamp collecting.
That was the standard prediction for decades. But look around us. Has religion disappeared from Indian public life?
Definitely not. If anything, it's louder than ever. It's on social media, it's in political rallies, it's absolutely central to the conversation.
And that's the great paradox. In India, modernity and democracy have actually increased the public role of religion, not decreased it.
Okay, why? That seems completely counterintuitive.
The main reason is identity. In a massive, anonymous, modern democracy, you can feel lost. You're just one person among a billion. You need an identity to bargain with the state. Religion provides a ready-made vote bank and a powerful community identity.
So it's not just about faith, it's become a tool for political leverage.
A very powerful tool. It's a way of saying, we are a group, there are millions of us, so you have to listen to us.
The source also mentions the rise of new religious movements like the Deras in Punjab and Haryana.
Yes, and that's a perfect example. These aren't just spiritual centers, they are massive social welfare organizations, and they are huge political players. Politicians of all parties flock to the Dera heads before an election because they can influence millions of votes. The Dera head is a kind of modern religious lion in Pareto's terms.
So secularization in India doesn't mean less religion. It just means religion has entered the marketplace of politics in a new way.
That's a great way to put it. And this, of course, leads to the issue of communalism. We have to be very careful to distinguish between using religion for identity, which is arguably a natural part of democracy, and using it to create antagonism and hatred against another group.
Right, and that's where you get into the debates around majoritarianism versus minority appeasement.
Exactly. These are the heavily debated concepts mentioned in the source. Majoritarianism is the belief that the majority community's culture and values should have a primacy in the nation. And minority appeasement is the accusation that the state panders to minority groups for their votes.
And a sociologist's job is not to take a side.
A sociologist's job is to look at these concepts neutrally, not judging them as good or bad, but asking, how are these narratives used to mobilize people? How do they create a sense of we versus they? What are the social consequences of this kind of politics?
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of theory. Now let's get really practical. Segment 6, PYQ linkage. This is the simplified UPSC special sauce.
This is where the rubber meets the road. Let's make it useful.
I'm going to throw some questions at you, real questions from the last few years, and I want to do this a little differently. I'm going to tell you how a reasonably smart but unprepared student would probably answer it. And you tell me why I'm wrong and how to fix it.
I love this format. It's perfect. Let's do it.
All right. Question 1 from a hypothetical 2025 paper 1. Is pressure group politics a threat or a necessary element of democracy? My off-the-cuff answer. They are a threat because they block roads, cause bans, and create a lot of inconvenience for the general public.
And you would get maybe 3 out of 10 marks. That is a journalist's answer or an angry uncle's answer on WhatsApp. It completely lacks the sociological imagination.
Okay, harsh but fair. So how do I fix it?
You need to show both sides, using the concepts we just discussed. First, start with a clear definition of pressure groups. Then, for the necessary element argument, you use the safety valve theory. Argue that without these groups, the frustration of the marginalized would have no outlet and could lead to revolution. You can cite the farmers' movement or various civil rights groups as examples of how they represent the unrepresented.
Okay, so that's the positive side.
Then, for the threat argument, you go beyond just talking about traffic jams. You talk about the zero-sum game in a scarce economy. You discuss how wealthy lobbies, the associational groups like business chambers, can overpower the poor. You can also mention how anomic groups can lead to violence and public disruption.
And the conclusion.
The conclusion is key. Don't take a hard side. Conclude that they are inevitable and even necessary in a large plural society like India, but they require regulation to ensure a level playing field. And if you really want to impress, you quote Rajni Kothari on how they can, in fact, deepen democracy by giving a voice to more people.
That's a much better answer. Okay, question 2, also from paper 1. Highlight the main features of historical materialism. Is it relevant in understanding contemporary societies? My simple answer. Marx said money matters. Rich people rule society. It's still true today.
Again, you've got the core idea, but it's far too simplistic. It's a one-liner, not an analysis. You need to connect Marx to the elite theorists we just discussed.
How so?
You start by explaining Marx's core idea. The economic base determines the political superstructure. Then, for contemporary relevance, you contrast this with Pareto or Mosca. Marx says power comes purely from economic class, from owning property. But Pareto says it comes from psychological skill, the lions and foxes. Mosca says it comes from organization. So you create a debate.
So I can ask, is it just the rich who rule India today, as Marx would say? Or is it the cunning politicians who may not be billionaires, as Pareto would argue?
Exactly, and then you can synthesize them. You can use C. Wright Mills' power elite to show how the corporate class, Marx's capitalists, and the political class, Pareto's elites, have now merged in a corporate politician nexus. This shows Marx is still relevant, but his theory needs to be updated with insights from elite theory.
Brilliant. Okay, this next one is scary, from paper 2. Do you think that in a society like India, orthogenetic changes take place through differentiation? Honestly, my first instinct would be to just skip this question. That word orthogenetic is terrifying.
Don't panic at the jargon. That's what they want you to do. Just break it down. Orthogenetic simply means internal change. Change that comes from within the Indian tradition, not just copied from the West. Differentiation just means things getting more specialized and complex.
Okay, so internal change through specialization.
Yes. And the perfect thinker to use here is Yogendra Singh and his book, Modernization of Indian Tradition. Your example is caste. Caste is a classic internal or orthogenetic institution. It's our own thing. But it is differentiated. It's not just a ritual hierarchy anymore. It is differentiated into modern forms like caste associations, which are basically political pressure groups.
So the answer is yes. Tradition isn't dying.
It's differentiating. It's adapting and taking on new, modern functions. Caste, an ancient social institution, has become a modern political tool. That's your entire answer.
That is a fantastic connection. Okay, next. From paper 2, 2023. Discuss the role of market and modern forces in understanding changing trends in marriage. This sounds purely social, not political.
It is social, but a top-tier answer will link it back to politics and the elites. Remember Dipankar Gupta's citizen elite?
Yes, the ones pushing for universal values.
Well, the market, urbanization, and modern education create this class. For them, a person's profession, education, and values matter more than their caste. So what trend do we see in marriage among this group?
Intercaste marriages.
Exactly. Intercaste and interreligious marriages are rising, especially among this urban citizen elite. Now, what's the political impact of that? It breaks the traditional vote bank. If people start marrying across caste lines, their political loyalty shifts from pure kinship to maybe class-based or interest-based voting. It slowly but surely changes the entire political demography of the country.
Wow, I would never have made that link. Okay, another one from 2023, paper 2. Criticize the view that India's villages are representative of Indian society's basic civilizational values. My naive answer. Villages are great. They represent our culture, fresh air, simple life.
That's the romantic view, and the question specifically asks you to criticize it. This is a direct invitation to bring in the Gandhi versus Ambedkar debate.
Right, so I start with the romantic view.
Yes. You state that the view, promoted by colonial scholars and even Gandhi, romanticized the village as the pure soul of India. Then you bring in the critique. You use André Bataille's work on how villages are actually rife with inequality, or even better. You use Ambedkar's scathing critique of the village as a sink of localism and a site of brutal caste oppression.
So the argument is that the village doesn't just represent our civilizational values, it also represents our civilizational baggage.
Perfect phrasing. And then you link this to governance. This is why we needed a modern constitution and a strong, centralized state to impose reform on the villages. It connects directly to the failures of decentralization we talked about, which are often caused by this deep-rooted social rigidity.
And finally, a common short note topic. Mills' power elite. How do I make that answer stand out?
The best way to analyze any one theory is to contrast it with its main rival. For C. Wright Mills, the rival is Robert Dahl and his pluralist theory.
So Mills says power is concentrated.
In a pyramid, yes. Dahl says no. Power in a democracy is dispersed. It's spread out among thousands of competing pressure groups. No one group dominates all the time.
And the Indian context.
The Indian reality is probably somewhere in between. We absolutely have a power elite, a nexus of big business and top politicians, but we also have an incredibly noisy and chaotic democracy with powerful pressure groups, an active judiciary, and a loud media that prevents total domination by one single elite blob. So you can argue that Mills is right about the concentration of wealth and power, but Dahl is also right about the dispersion of noise and influence.
This has been an absolute marathon, but incredibly clarifying. Let's try and bring it all home.
We've covered a lot of ground. We've traveled from the psychological roots of power with Pareto's lions and foxes, through the messy, on-the-ground reality of Indian pressure groups and vote banks, all the way to the Pati Sarpanch in the villages.
And the big aha moment for me, really, is this. Politics in India isn't just chaos, it's a structured negotiation. It's the old world caste, religion, kinship, constantly negotiating with the new world of the constitution and democracy.
And sometimes the old world simply wears the clothes of the new world.
Like a caste group rebranding itself as a modern political pressure group.
That's the perfect summary. Tradition modernizes, it adapts, it doesn't just die.
All right, here is a provocative thought to end on for you to think about. We talked about elites, we talked about Pareto's lions and foxes, Michels' oligarchs. In the world we live in today, are social media influencers the new power elite?
Ooh, that is an interesting question.
I mean, think about it. If Pareto were alive today, would he call a YouTuber with 20 million subscribers a lion or a fox? And is Michels' iron law of oligarchy being broken by the internet where anyone can have a voice? Or is the algorithm just the new invisible oligarch?
I think the algorithm is the ultimate oligarch. It's an invisible hand that decides what the masses see and think. It's not a person, but it's an oligarchy of code. That's a scary thought, and maybe one for the next deep dive.
Something to mull over, for sure.
And before you go, a final, quick reminder. If this breakdown helped you see the matrix of Indian politics a little more clearly, please hit that subscribe button. It directly supports the Simplified UPSC by PPP mission.
And if you found real value here, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It makes a huge, huge difference and allows us to keep doing this.
Don't forget to join the public Telegram channel for the free notes and all those PYQs we discussed. The link is right there for you.
And for the most serious aspirants, the private library is waiting with all the premium notes and the model answers. Just DM on the public channel to get in.
Keep learning, and more importantly, keep questioning.
And we'll see you in the next deep dive.